It really makes you stop and think about where we're getting our information these days.
It does.
I saw this statistic recently. For people under 30, a whopping 53% say social media is their main source for election news.
53%. Wow.
Yeah. Compared to just 16% who still turn to TV news? I mean, that's a complete turnaround from even like a decade ago.
That figure really does underscore a fundamental change, doesn't it? How people are engaging with political information.
Definitely.
The traditional gatekeepers of news media, they just don't hold that primary position anymore for a really significant chunk of voters.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. Social media's role specifically in the 2024 U.S. elections.
Okay.
And this isn't just about, who's liking what post. It's really about how these digital platforms are fundamentally reshaping our democratic process.
For everyone.
For all of us, yeah, no matter our political leanings. So we've gathered a range of articles and research to really try and get under the skin of this topic. Our goal here is to give you, the listener, a clear understanding of the most important ways social media influenced the election. Sort of a shortcut to being well-informed without feeling, totally overwhelmed.
Makes sense. Cut through the noise a bit.
Right. We want to explore exactly how these digital spaces impacted the electoral process last year.
Okay, so let's unpack that. How did we get here? How did platforms like, say, TikTok or Instagram become these primary places for people to learn about candidates, about elections?
Well, I think there are a few factors driving it. Firstly, these platforms, TikTok, Instagram, X, Facebook, they're just so deeply embedded in our daily lives, aren't they?
Especially for younger generations, yeah.
Right. They offer this constant flow of updates, mixing, personal stuff with news, entertainment, everything.
So it's convenient. It's where people already are.
Exactly. For many, these platforms are simply where they spend their time anyway, so it makes them a convenient source for political info, too.
And then there's the speed, the incredible speed information travels on social media.
Oh, absolutely.
You might see breaking news pop up on X before you even see it on a traditional news site.
Precisely. The velocity is just dramatically faster. News, reactions, they spread almost instantly.
Which has pros and cons, I imagine.
Definitely. It allows for rapid sharing, sure, but it also cuts down the time for, traditional journalistic checks, verification, providing that broader context.
Right. And it seems like a lot of people are forming opinions based on these really brief encounters, these viral clips.
Totally.
I remember seeing tons of 10-second highlights from primary debates just flying around on Instagram.
Yeah, and that creates this fragmented picture of really complex issues, doesn't it?
It really does. Voters often develop impressions from these moments, maybe taken out of context, a short soundbite, a meme, whatever.
And while those things grab attention, they often lack the depth, the nuance you need to really understand a candidate's full position or the details of a policy.
We saw that initial sort of promise of more diverse voices being heard, which, in theory is a positive thing.
Sure, democratization of information.
But then substantive discussions can just get drowned out, right? By whatever is trending, by content that's designed purely to get clicks and shares.
That's a critical point. It's fascinating because, yes, more people can participate, but the platform algorithms, they tend to push the sensational stuff.
The stuff that gets a reaction.
Exactly. Emotionally charged content boosts engagement, so that's what gets amplified. And the more thoughtful, maybe drier policy stuff, it can get pushed aside.
Okay, so it's not just about us, the users, scrolling and absorbing. The candidates themselves are using these platforms very differently now, too.
Oh, absolutely. Completely new ways.
Yeah. In 2024, candidates were directly engaging with voters on social media.
Right.
Sharing personal stories to kind of build connections.
Outlining policy points in simple formats, giving constant campaign updates.
It basically bypasses the traditional media gatekeepers.
Yeah, that direct line of communication. And the way campaigns operate now seems so digitally integrated. It's way beyond just running a few online ads.
Oh, definitely. Successful campaigns in 2024 were like fully integrated digital operations.
Right.
They used social media not just for messaging, but for really vital stuff like fundraising. Think about the millions raised in small dollar donations from social media pushes.
Yeah, those fundraising drives are constant.
And organizing volunteers, rapidly responding to, whatever blows up online. criticisms.
That direct access for voters, though, that feels like a real game changer.
It does.
You can follow a candidate's day-to-day, see their sometimes unfiltered thoughts, even ask questions in a Q&A. It creates a different kind of connection, maybe.
I think so. It fosters a sense of personal connection. And if you look at the bigger picture, the level of direct access voters have now is just unprecedented.
Yeah.
A candidate might, say, post an Instagram video explaining an issue, then host a live Q&A on X, maybe put a short TikTok breaking down policy benefits.
And run a face-pay fundraiser all at the same time.
Exactly. This multi-platform real-time engagement was really a hallmark of the 2024 campaigns.
It's almost like campaigns have become their own mini media companies.
That's a great way to put it. Constantly producing content, always ready to react.
Yeah, tailored content for different platforms, different groups, reacting to events within minutes sometimes.
Precisely. They operate much more like agile, rapid response media outlets now. That agility, that continuous content creation, it's essential today.
And it's not just the big, high-profile national races, is it? It feels like this has maybe somewhat leveled the playing field for smaller campaigns, too.
That's a really interesting point. For grassroots movements, maybe?
Yeah, or those local candidates who don't typically get loads of traditional media attention.
It raises an important question about empowerment. Social media does offer a powerful tool for them to build a following, organize supporters, talk directly to constituents.
Well, without needing the old gatekeepers, the established networks.
Right. And issue-focused movements have definitely used these platforms effectively to gain traction and, mobilize people.
Okay, but we can't talk about all this without getting into the darker side, the really concerning stuff.
Misinformation, deepfakes.
Yeah. It feels like these platforms have just become breeding grounds for false content, especially around elections.
Unfortunately, that's a critical piece of this reality. Social media is a major channel for election misinformation, fabricated stories, manipulated images, doctored videos, quotes ripped out of context.
And those increasingly sophisticated deepfakes.
Exactly.
And it spreads so fast, doesn't it? I remember reading somewhere that false info travels something like 6 times faster online than facts.
That statistic really hits home the scale of the challenge. The speed is alarming.
Yeah.
And even after false stories are debunked, they can still stick around in people's minds. That continued influence effect is a real worry.
It's like a rumor, right? Even if you find out it's not true, it kind of lingers.
Precisely. Can subtly shape your perception anyway.
We saw some pretty disturbing examples during the primaries, didn't we? Those manipulated videos of candidates supposedly saying inflammatory things.
Yes, some clearly AI generated, but still.
A significant number of people still thought they were real, even after warning.
That shows the real-world impact, doesn't it? Despite fact checks, a notable percentage of viewers who saw those deepfakes still believed them. It really underscores the persuasive power of this synthetic media.
And it's not always the super high-tech stuff either, is it? Sometimes it's simpler.
That's right, like a selectively edited clip, or maybe a genuine photo but with a completely false caption.
Those can be just as effective, maybe more so.
Often, yes. Because they have that grain of truth, it makes them harder to just dismiss outright compared to something obviously fake.
I even saw reports about misinformation targeting specific communities, like false info about polling place changes. That feels particularly, I don't know, malicious.
It is. We saw instances of targeted misinformation, like that false claims about polling locations, voter ID rules circulating on local neighborhood platforms.
Aiming to suppress votes in certain areas.
Potentially, yes. It's designed to sow confusion and distrust.
And the deepfakes themselves. They're getting scarily realistic, not like those early glitchy ones.
The sophistication has increased dramatically. What used to be easy to spot is now created with AI tools that are more accessible, producing really convincing fakes that are hard for anyone to identify.
Okay, so you've got this flood of information, a lot of it potentially wrong or misleading. Then you add in how the platforms actually decide what you see, the algorithms.
Right, that adds another whole layer of complexity.
This brings us right to the role of those platform algorithms. These complex systems basically curate your feed.
Based on your past behavior online, what you've liked, commented on, shared, even how long you pause on a post.
Creating these super personalized information environments for each user.
Exactly. Which leads directly to those filter bubbles or echo chambers we hear so much about.
Where you mostly just see stuff that already fits with what you believe.
Precisely. You're predominantly exposed to information confirming your existing views, and you rarely encounter diverse or opposing perspectives.
And the algorithms themselves tend to push certain kinds of content, right? Emotional stuff.
Internal research from platforms has suggested that yes, Algorithms often amplify content that sparks strong emotions, especially things like outrage, because that drives engagement, clicks, shares, comments.
So the platforms want to keep you engaged, keep you scrolling.
And emotionally charged content is often stickier. It keeps users on the platform longer, which is good for their business model, but it inadvertently prioritizes that kind of content.
So you could literally have two neighbors living side by side in a key swing state.
And their social media feeds during the election could look completely, utterly different.
Wow.
One might see content constantly criticizing one candidate, while the other sees a feed painting a totally different reality, leading to vastly different perceptions.
And if you're only ever seeing one side, only hearing confirming voices, it feels like that could really push people towards more extreme views.
It can.
Make them think everyone agrees with them, maybe.
This algorithmic segregation can definitely have consequences. Views can become more entrenched inside echo chambers. People might get a skewed idea of public opinion, thinking their view is more common than it is.
And it can breed hostility towards the other side.
It can foster that, yes. This tailoring, designed for engagement, changes how we perceive the range of opinions out there. It can hinder empathy, make it harder to understand different viewpoints.
It makes you wonder how often people are actually shown things that challenge their beliefs. Seems like the algorithms prioritize comfort over maybe comprehensive information.
Well, research does suggest that exposure to diverse viewpoints can moderate extreme positions. But platform algorithms, optimized for engagement, usually don't prioritize showing you challenging content unless they're specifically tweaked to do so.
And how these algorithms actually work, it feels so hidden, like a black box deciding what news we get.
That opacity is a major issue. The specific factors deciding what's in your feed are largely secret, not just from us users, but even from independent researchers.
Which makes it really hard to understand or counter their effects, right?
Incredibly difficult. It's like trying to understand a recipe when you don't know the ingredients or the exact amounts. You see the final cake, the content, but not how it was made or why.
Okay, now layer on top of that political advertising, which is not your grandpa's TV spot anymore.
Not at all. It's this hyper-targeted, micro-targeted world now.
Right. Campaigns use incredibly sophisticated data analysis
to deliver customized ads to very specific voter segments based on demographics, interests, online behavior, even inferred psychological traits.
So instead of one ad reaching millions, you have thousands of slightly different versions running all at once.
Exactly. Aimed at tiny specific slices of the electorate in crucial areas.
It's a massive shift from broad mass market ads. Campaigns test endlessly, tweaking messages for specific groups with incredible precision.
It's almost like these campaigns are partly invisible, happening in the background.
Yeah, you and your neighbor could be getting totally different ads from the same campaign. How do you even talk about what the campaign is saying?
That's a key difficulty.
Yeah.
It makes having shared conversations about platforms really challenging. One person sees ads about, say, manufacturing jobs. Their neighbor sees ads about student debt relief.
Even in the same town, from the same candidate, these parallel, sort of invisible campaigns.
Exactly.
And the amount of money pouring into this digital advertising, it's enormous, isn't it?
Huge. Projections for 2024 were over $1.2 billion. It shows campaigns believe they get a really high return on investment compared to traditional media.
But again, transparency questions pop up. If everyone's getting different messages, how do we get a clear picture of what a candidate actually stands for?
It's a major concern. And regulatory bodies, like the FEC, have really struggled to keep pace with these rapidly evolving technologies. There are gaps in disclosure rules for online ads.
And those ad libraries the platforms offer, they don't tell the whole story, do they?
They're a step, but often lack crucial details, especially about the targeting. Who exactly saw this ad?
Right.
Plus, you have things like dark post ads targeted to specific users that don't show up on the campaign's main page or in everyone's library, making it even harder to track.
So the social media companies themselves are playing this massive role, acting almost like the new gatekeepers of political information.
That's a very good way to put it. Through their content moderation policies, their algorithm designs, their ad rules, they are powerful gatekeepers. They significantly influence what voters see, what gets amplified, what gets restricted.
And their rules about what's okay, what gets taken down, they seem to vary quite a bit from platform to platform.
Dramatically. Some platforms invest more in fact-checking, have stricter misinformation policies. Others take a much more hands-off approach,
leading to these inconsistent information environments. The same post might be flagged on one platform and go viral on another.
Exactly. and the sheer volume of content. Billions of posts makes it impossible for humans to review everything.
So they have to rely on AI, on automated systems.
Heavily. But those systems aren't perfect. They make mistakes taking down legitimate content, missing harmful stuff, false positives, false negatives.
I've noticed sometimes around big events like Election Day, the platforms seem to adjust things, maybe boost news from official sources.
That they might, yes, temporarily adjust algorithms to prioritize authoritative news or election officials.
Which can be helpful, I guess.
It can elevate reliable info, but it also raises questions, doesn't it, about how much private companies should be steering political discourse, even with good intentions.
And of course, any decision they make on moderation, someone gets angry.
Oh, inevitably. These decisions are incredibly politically charged now. Accusations of bias fly from all sides constantly. It shows how hard it is to create policies seen as fair and neutral by everyone.
It feels like lawmakers are always playing catch-up. Lots of hearings, lots of talk.
But comprehensive federal legislation, tackling content moderation, platform accountability, it's remained elusive.
So the platforms still have a lot of leeway to make their own rules.
They do. And now we're seeing different states trying to pass their own laws, which just adds another layer of complexity.
You know, shifting gears slightly, it's not just the candidates and news outlets anymore shaping the conversation. There's this whole world of social media influencers.
Absolutely. A really significant development.
They seem to have real clout, especially with younger audiences.
They do. Individuals who've built large, engaged followings, they now wield substantial power to shape election narratives, mobilize voters.
And it's often because they seem more relatable, more authentic.
That's a big part of it. The trust and connection influencers build can make their political takes highly impactful. More so sometimes than traditional sources.
Like if a lifestyle influencer you follow talks personally about why they're voting a certain way.
That personal story can resonate much more deeply with their audience than, say, a polished campaign speech might.
I've seen instances where it seems like a bunch of influencers suddenly start talking about the same issue all at once. Is that coordinated sometimes?
It can be. We've seen coordinated efforts where influencers work together to elevate specific issues, push them into the mainstream discussion, maybe pressure candidates. Campaigns definitely noticed this in 2024.
They're actively reaching out to them.
Very actively, collaborating with creators across different platforms.
And it's not just the superstars with millions of followers either, right? I hear about micro-influencers.
Yes, those with smaller but often highly engaged niche followings. They're increasingly valuable because their recommendations within that specific community can feel even more authentic and trustworthy.
And politically, it's all over the map, isn't it?
You know,
Influencers from all different perspectives.
incredibly diverse landscape. Conservative commentators on YouTube, progressive activists on TikTok, people focused on single issues like climate or crypto, all contributing to this online political buzz.
And campaigns aren't just trying to buy endorsements anymore. It's more about relationships.
Smart campaigns realize that, focusing on building genuine relationships, giving creators info and resources, letting them create authentic content. The Biden campaign's Content Creator Summit was a good example of that strategy.
So it's kind of democratized commentary, giving more people a voice, which seems good.
It has allowed previously excluded voices to reach huge audiences, yes.
But then you have concerns about accountability, right? Are they following journalistic standards, spreading misinformation themselves sometimes?
Those are very valid concerns. Accountability, the potential spread of misinformation without rigorous fact-checking. It's definitely a downside that needs attention.
So, okay, let's step back. We've talked about the landscape, the campaigns, the algorithms, the bad actors, the influencers. What does all this mean for democracy, big picture?
Well, the implications are pretty profound and kind of mixed. On one hand, you have undeniably increased accessibility and engagement.
More people involved, especially younger people.
Exactly. Social media has brought millions into the process who might otherwise be disconnected. Younger Americans report higher engagement, more political knowledge, partly because of it.
But the flip side, it feels like it's getting harder and harder for us to agree on just basic facts.
That's the critical tension. This fragmentation of our information environment really threatens the common ground needed for healthy democratic dialogue.
How can you debate or compromise if you don't even share the same reality?
Precisely. When voters operate with fundamentally different sets of facts, productive discussion just breaks down.
And the nature of social media itself? Fast, emotional?
It often prioritizes speed and emotional impact over accuracy and careful nuance. That can lead to less thoughtful deliberation, more reactive, maybe even angrier political engagement.
It really feels like we're living in these personalized bubbles, which is just so different from how, say, our parents or grandparents got their news.
It's a fundamental shift in how we experience citizenship. Previous generations largely consumed similar news from a few major sources. Today, we're increasingly in these separate information universes curated by algorithms.
And ultimately, that can't be great for the health of the system, can it?
The consequences are worrying. Research links heavy social media use, in this current form, to increased political polarization, declining trust in institutions like the media and government, and rising hostility towards opponents.
Which weakens the very foundations of democratic discourse.
You got it.
So how do we navigate this? What can people actually do to be more savvy, more informed consumers in this digital world?
It really requires a conscious effort. Digital literacy is no longer optional. It's a crucial civic skill. We need better education on how to critically evaluate online sources, spot misinformation, understand algorithmic influence.
So things like actively seeking out different perspectives, double-checking claims before sharing.
Yes, the basics, but maybe supercharged. Be mindful of your own emotional reactions. Is this post designed to make me angry? Engage respectfully, even when you disagree.
What about technology itself? You mentioned AI earlier, it causes problems, but could it be part of the solution too?
It's definitely a double-edged sword.
Mm.
AI powers deepfakes and automated manipulation, sure, but it also holds potential for better misinformation detection tools, for creating accessible explanations of complex topics, maybe even for making algorithms fairer or more transparent.
Are other countries dealing with this better? Can we learn anything from them?
It's a global issue, and different countries are trying different things. Regulations, educational programs. We can certainly look internationally for insights and potential models, even if direct copies don't work.
Yeah, we've mostly talked nationally, but this affects local races too, right? Down ballot stuff.
Absolutely. Social media is increasingly shaping local elections, issue campaigns. They face the same challenges, misinformation, polarization, but it also gives local candidates vital tools to connect directly with voters.
And we can't forget these platforms are businesses. Their goals aren't necessarily aligned with, perfect democratic discourse.
That's crucial. Their commercial imperatives, based on advertising revenue, maximizing user engagement, fundamentally shape how political information flows.
Mm.
Often, that means prioritizing sticky emotional content over maybe more balanced or nuanced information.
It feels like this whole landscape is just going to keep changing, keep evolving, new platforms, new tech.
It's incredibly dynamic. The relationship between social media and democracy isn't static. It will continue to shift. Understanding the underlying forces at play is essential if you want to participate effectively.
So it really boils down to individual awareness, doesn't it? Being intentional about how we consume and share political information online.
I think so. It requires voters to actively reflect. How is social media shaping my understanding? And then approach that digital environment with more awareness, more intention. Being responsible digital citizens, basically.
Okay, so wrapping this up. It seems clear social media has delivered this incredible access and potential for engagement in elections. More people involved.
Unprecedented access, yeah.
But there's this significant dark side. Serious challenges around misinformation, those algorithmic biases pushing us into bubbles, the rise of influencers outside traditional checks and balances. It really is a double-edged sword.
That sums it up perfectly.
Mm.
The core tension is right there. Amazing opportunities for participation versus significant threats to an informed public due to fake news, filter bubbles, and shifting sources of influence.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with this final thought to maybe chew on. In this increasingly personalized, algorithm-driven world we live in, how can each of us actively work to cultivate that shared understanding, that common ground of facts and maybe even values that's so vital for democracy to actually function? Maybe, just maybe, it starts with taking a really hard look at our own social media feeds, our own habits, and making a conscious effort to seek out perspectives that, might actually challenge us a little.
Indeed. That active cultivation, seeking out diversity in our own information diets, that feels like a really vital first step for all of us trying to navigate this complex, constantly changing digital landscape.